And we're back in the car on a Saturday like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your late Saturday afternoon into early evening here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Well, once again, we need to talk about Aaron. We need to talk about Aaron. And I did a very similar episode to this a year ago when Aaron Judge was just going crazy again after having had the spectacular 2022 season in which he broke not only Babe Ruth's old school 154 game, for whatever that's worth, home run record of 60, but then he broke the Jolly Roger, the Roger Maris's 61 in 1961. He broke that record too, hitting 62 home runs in 2022. Well, last year, Judge he just put up numbers that were completely insane. And he is somehow, at age 33, he's somehow better than ever. Now, that doesn't really make much sense, but, you know, our eyes can deceive us, but in this case, it's not really our eyes. It's the 1 + 1 = 2 reality. Aaron Judge is, with the Yankees record, is like 43-26. He's at 390. The guy's hitting 10 points below 400. We're halfway through June. This is not baseball, Susan. But he's hitting 390, so he's leading the league in hitting. No shit. 26 homers, not leading the league, and he has 60 ribbies. I don't think he's leading the league there either. But in theory, he could challenge for the Triple Crown. He could enter the rarefied realm of the Mickey Mantle, who recently was judged to be the 4th best New York Yankee of all time. He's not. Third. I'm sorry. They had him ahead of Joe DiMaggio. He's not. Mick does not go in front of Joe D. No, it was Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, Mantle, but they had it flipped, and then they had Jeter 5th. I mean, I love Derek Jeter, but in the immortal words of John McEnroe, you cannot be serious. Jeter's not the 5th greatest Yankee of all time. Come on. But that's beside the point. We need to talk about Aaron. Because what he's doing now, he is now a peer in terms of production on the field. Not in terms of World Series rings, we'll get to that. He is putting up numbers like the Babe, like old Lucius, the Iron Horse, Lou Gehrig himself, like Joe DiMaggio, and like Mickey Mantle, the last Yankee to win a Triple Crown in 1956. You know, the names always come up, and usually when you compare any New York Yankee, let alone anyone, but any New York Yankee, to those guys, I mean, it's embarrassing. But he's literally putting up Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle numbers. And in fact, other than the Babe and Lucius, he's outdoing them. Now, if you really want to break down the numbers, I love talking about Joe DiMaggio in this context because some of his numbers are just sick beyond imagination. The year of the 56-game hitting streak. The year of the 56-game hitting streak was 1941. That's the year that Ted Williams did what? What? He was the last major league player to hit 400 in a season. So 74? My dad was a CPA. Dad, I'm sorry. 84 freaking years ago is the last time somebody hit 400 in a season. Ted Williams hit 406. But you know, Ted Williams did not win the Most Valuable Player award in 1941 because Joe DiMaggio hit in 56 consecutive games. That is a record that is not going to be broken. The closest that anybody has gotten since 1941 is Pete Rose hitting in 44 in 1978. He was still 12 games shy. He got 80% of the way there and fell 12 games short. But the best statistic, the best Joe DiMaggio statistic, there's a lot of great DiMaggio statistics. Yes, the fact that he married Marilyn Monroe is pretty fucking impressive. We'll give him that too. But the best Joe DiMaggio statistic from 1941 is he hit 30 home runs, which was a little bit low for him, but you always have to remember with DiMaggio, he was a right-handed dead pull hitter playing in a ballpark that was not conducive to right-handed batters hitting home runs. Because the power alley was 457. 457! It was 457 feet to the power alley, and it was 463 to dead center. Good luck hitting the ball at a Yankee Stadium. Remember, also, the monuments were on the field. You had Miller Huggins and Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. People thought they were buried there. They weren't buried there. They literally were monuments. It wasn't a cemetery. So people to this day that still think, oh yeah, weren't they buried? No, they weren't buried out there. The fact that the monuments were on the field would give you an idea of how rare it was for anybody to even hit a ball that far for a double or a triple. It was not doable. So 1941, Joltin' Joe DiMaggio, the greatest living ball player for decades until he passed in 1999. And then Willie Mays got that unofficial title, and now it's Ken Griffey Jr., but most people would have him as the greatest living ball player. 1941, Joe DiMaggio hit about 360, 370, 375, something like that. Hit 30 home runs. Little bit of a low tally. He had about 620, 630 plate appearances. You know how many times Joltin' Joe struck out that year, 1941? He struck out 13 times. He struck out 13 times the whole season. 13 strikeouts. Now, we love Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge, talent-wise, is as talented as anybody the Yanks have ever had since the Bambino. And that's mostly because Babe Ruth was a Hall of Fame caliber pitcher before he became Babe Ruth, the outfielder hitting 714 home runs in his career. Aaron Judge has had weeks where he struck out 13 times. Joe DiMaggio went an entire freaking season and a World Series win. The Yankees beat the Dodgers that year in 5. They were very fortunate. Here's a little historical tidbit for you. The Yankees were up 2-1 in that World Series. They were about to lose Game 4. They were about to lose Game 4. There were 2 outs, and I think there was a guy on first. And Tommy Henrich, whose nickname was what? Old Reliable. Tommy Henrich, Old Reliable. He was probably 25. They were calling him Old Reliable. That's fantastic, right? Tommy Henrich struck out. Mickey Owen, who was the catcher, he didn't get the ball cleanly. It got past him. Tommy Henrich got to first base, and then the roof fell in on the Dodgers. The Yankees ended up winning that game, and then they won the World Series the next day in Game 5 behind who? Ernie Bonham. Beat him, I think, 3-1, or Oiny, as the Brooklyn Dodger fans call him, that heavy accent. So that was 1941. That was Joltin' Joe DiMaggio, and that was the last time somebody hit 400. Now, spoiler alert, Aaron Judge not hitting 400 this year. He's not. He will slump. He will slump. But as we've seen from him in the past, when he slumps within normal parameters. He will go 13 games without a homer. He will have a stretch of 40 at-bats, let's say 8, 9, 10 games. I'll even go further. He will have a stretch of 50 at-bats where he goes something like 8 or 9 for 50. Because it is baseball, Susan. Even Aaron Judge will slump. He's not going to just hit singles and no home runs. He's going to slump. He's going to have a stretch of 40 or 50 at-bats where he strikes out 12 to 16 times and only gets like 7 or 8 hits. And the sports talk radio will light up with alleged diehard Yankee fans saying it's time to put this guy on the bench. I remember in 2017, guy ended up, he hit 54 home runs that year? 52, 53, 54, something like that. There were fans calling, demanding that he be sent down to the minors when he slumped in August. To the minors. Fans are very fickle. We love Aaron Judge, but he has a couple of games where he strikes out a lot. In the immortal words of Chris Mad Dog Russo, kick him off the team, throw him out of the league. But what Judge is doing is something that it is very special. And for a Yankee fan such as myself, and this is not a concept that you necessarily ponder, but my favorite player growing up, and there was a really cool meme on him that got a lot of play on Instagram today and probably on TikTok, Don Mattingly. Don Mattingly will always be my favorite Yankee. And part of it is within the sports world, within the parameters of sport, the fact that Mattingly's career was, he's a tragic figure. He's really the only other than Gehrig, but that's for a different reason. Don Mattingly is the only tragic figure in Yankees history, and by that I mean there's two reasons why. The first and most obvious reason is that in Mattingly's 14-year career, the Yankees did not win a World Series. They got to the World Series in '81. He wasn't really on the roster. He had a cup of coffee, he had a couple of at-bats that year. His last year, the only year they made the postseason, and they only made the postseason because they changed the playoff structure after the strike. Fans were pissed off. Ownership, and by ownership I mean all the owners, Bud Selig, they got together and said, we got to do something for the fans after this complete clusterfuck disaster. We got to do something. So they said, you know what, we're going to change the structure so more teams are involved. The fans, it worked. So Donnie did not get to go to a postseason until 1995 and did not win a World Series. And he is far and away the best Yankee who did not win, didn't even get to play in a World Series. So that's the first reason why he's a tragic figure. The second reason is just on the field. Don Mattingly in his prime was a whisker below Stan Musial. A whisker below Musial. And there was a stat in this meme that I saw. In the seasons of 1984 through 1987, Don Mattingly was twice as likely to either hit a home run or a double than to strike out. For the 3 years between 84 and 86, his batting average was 1 point higher than prime Tony Gwynn. And he hit 90 more home runs, 40 more doubles. The numbers were ridiculous. And if you say prime Mattingly was Tony Gwynn with power, yeah, that's exactly it. Now, Mattingly was not Judge. He wasn't even close to Judge. Aaron Judge is a legitimate five-tool player where he does everything on a baseball field. He's fundamentally sound, we know that, but he does everything well. He can run like the wind for such a big dude. He can boogie, as they say. He can run like the wind. He has a cannon for an arm. He hits for power. The guy does, and he's a good fielder. Even though he dropped the ball in the World Series, I mean, stupid stuff like that happens in baseball. I've seen some incredible players. Willie Mays, 1973 World Series, looking befuddled. There was a guy who, in his entire career, never looked lost at sea in the field except that one moment, and people pointed at, oh yeah, Willie shouldn't have been out there because he fucked up. I'm sure you could find something in 1958 where he made a bad play and would say, oh, it's terrible that we had to see Willie stumble around in the outfield. People get carried away. Don Mattingly was a three-tool player. He was a guy who could hit for power. He wasn't a masher, but he did hit 35 home runs in 1985. And, that was way before the so-called juiced ball era. Donnie was probably 175, 180 soaking wet. He had a normal throwing arms at first baseman. He couldn't run. But Judge is, like, his WAR this year is going to be, if he, fingers crossed, if he doesn't get hurt, if he keeps it up, we are talking Babe Ruth level. And I know there's certain people on social media that say that we shouldn't mention the guys from the first part of the century because they weren't playing against the same caliber of opposition. Some of that is true, but some of that is more apocryphal. It's not true because there are plenty of players from the first part of the century. They were a lot better than everyone else, as Babe Ruth was. Thing to remember with Babe is that he was out homering entire teams by himself. He was hitting 50 plus home runs and then 60 in the dead ball era. When he hit 60 homers, he out homered almost every team by himself. You can't quantify that. There's nothing like that now. So yeah, I'm sure the pitching is better now, but Walter Johnson was throwing 100 miles an hour. Christy Matheson was almost unhittable. They were great pitchers. Yeah, I'm sure there were some guys who really had no business playing, but bear in mind, the talent pool was thinner. The talent pool was thinner in general, but there weren't nearly as many teams. There was only, I think, between 1/3 and 2/5 the same amount of teams as today. So from that perspective, only the best of who tried to play, played. The idea that your electrician was the pitcher. No, your electrician was not the pitcher. The pitcher was the pitcher. I mean, you had guys like Burley Grimes throwing spitballs, throwing 93-mile-an-hour spitballs. You had guys like Howard Emke, the kind of a second-tier great pitcher. There were great pitchers in Babe's era. It's not like today, but the idea is somebody with the incredible natural talent of a Babe Ruth. He would have different training. He would have had different upbringing as far as how do you usher pitchers from the minor leagues to the major leagues? How do you protect the elbow? How do you protect Babe from himself if he wanted to go out and have 30 hot dogs and his doctor said he couldn't handle that much salt or he was going to be in a hospital for that? Whatever it is. But we as Yankee fans, and this is why I get frustrated with so many fans, mostly younger than myself, and I always come across like the old head, but I'm not really going to apologize because I think this is true. There needs to be a greater appreciation for just how good he is and how lucky we are as fans to see a generational talent do what he's doing. And it's true also, he's 33. He's 1 year younger than Don Mattingly was when Donnie quit, when he retired. Now, his contract was up. He didn't walk away in the middle of the contract. It was understood the Yanks weren't bringing him back. They had to go in another direction. And they got Tino in trade, and man, was Tino a great Yankee. I love Tino Martinez. But you know what? Prime Tino was not Don Mattingly. He was in the power department, yeah, and he was a terrific fielder, but Mattingly was top 3 best fielding first baseman of all time. I mean, if first base play was judged as strongly as shortstop play, Donnie could have made the Hall of Fame just for how great of a first baseman he was. There are many who would say, well, you know, Keith Hernandez was probably a little bit better, but the kind of gulf between them, it wasn't much. Donnie was an absolute magician, made a lot of aggressive plays. Like he was so good in the field. 9 Gold Gloves. He probably could have won even more than that. But we are watching history. And if the Yankees don't win a World Series, I mean, it's going to be on him. Even though you can't really blame him because it takes a lot to win a World Series. And, you look at the Yankees run, with Torre from 96 to 2000. Tino Martinez did not really do very much. He did almost nothing in the 96 World Series, but other guys picked it up. It is a team sport. It is rare that one player can carry a team to the finish line. Alex Rodriguez in 2009 almost did. He was spectacular in all 3 rounds of the playoffs. But for example, you look at 96, the first year of Torre winning the World Series, and the Yanks hadn't won a World Series in 18 years. We're getting there now. We're 16 years past 2009. But the 1996 Yankees, their best player, and this is where it's stupid that Bernie wasn't judged as one of the 10 greatest Yankees in this informal poll where you had, I love Reggie Jackson, but Reggie Jackson cannot be rated above Bernie. What are you, fucking stupid? And A-Rod cannot be rated above Bernie because Bernie was the Yankees' best player. Another reason why Jeter can't be 5th. Bernie Williams was the Yankees' best player during the 1996 to 2000 4 World Series in 5 years. The point I was making about how rare it is for one person to carry a team all the way, now in 3 layers of playoffs. 1996, Bernie Williams beat Texas almost single-handedly. They got some good pitching, but Bernie was a monster. He switch hit home runs in the deciding Game 4. And then in the American League Championship Series against Baltimore, the Jeffrey Mayer game, but guess who hit the game-winning home run? Bernie Williams. Bernie was amazing in that entire series. The World Series, I think he had 3 hits, but they were all big hits. They hit against Maddox in Game 6, which proved to be the game winner, and he hit the home run in Game 3 to put that game out of reach. But if you just looked at the raw numbers, you'd say, my God, Bernie sucked. He was something like either 3 or 4 for 21 in the World Series. It's not that easy to string together one great series after another. If Judge, let's say, goes, and we hope he has another 2 or 3 years of prime. You don't really know about these things. The reflexes start to dull a little bbit. If he doesn't win a World Series, he becomes like a Ted Williams, a better all-around player than Ted. Ted Williams is generally regarded to be the best hitter who ever lived. I'm still going to go Babe Ruth, but you could say Ted Williams. You're not going to be wrong. Williams was an extraordinary hitter with that batting eye, the walks that he drew. Again, another guy where the WAR is completely absurd. I think he had a year where his on-base percentage was close to 500. It was Barry Bonds before Barry Bonds, but Ted was the splendid splinter, and Ted was also maybe 180 pounds soaking wet. He was very slender, the slender, splendid splinter. But Judge would join greats in other sports. You want to say Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing. I mean, relatively speaking, Judge is probably better than both of those guys in terms of his output and what he's able to do in his sport relative to theirs. But this is where you hope having all of these extra layers of playoffs doesn't end up being the reason. Because, and this is also important to note, there were no layers of playoffs until division play began in '69, the year of the Miracle Mets. The first championship series was '69. The first, however many World Series, the Yanks won like 20 World Series between 1923 and 1962. They won 20 World Series. If you had the best record in the American League, you went to the World Series. As great as many of those Yankee teams were, winning 110 games in 154 season, that kind of thing, they would have gotten picked off if there was even one more layer of playoffs. There would be guys with no World Series on their resumes. It's just the way it goes. So right now, I would 100% sign up for Aaron Judge, win one World Series. Just one, that's fine. Not that he needs it to justify, but so that he does not end up, a turbocharged, end boss level version of Don Mattingly. Because Don didn't get to the World Series. At least Aaron has now gotten to one, and the Yankees went deep. They got beat in the ALCS 3 times, as we know, by the somewhat notorious Houston Astros. But hopefully they will win one. I mean, this year they certainly look like, they're World Series contenders every year because they're the Yankees, because they can outspend mistakes. But also, the farm system has been producing solid players, and they've made some really good trades. They've gotten some guys off the scrap heap who've turned out to be kind of, hidden gems, diamonds in the rough. And that's really how it goes, because you're not going to hit home runs all the time. And it's very difficult to predict these things, because if you just look, for example, at the Mets record, if you knew nothing of the Mets season other than the fact that they're 19, 20, or 21 games over 500, better than the Yankees right now, you would assume that Juan Soto is putting up power numbers like Judge. You would assume that Juan Soto would already have more than 20 homers. He'd be hitting probably close to 300, if not 300, with, 70 RBIs. And Juan Soto really has not played anywhere near as really brilliantly. I mean, he was as good a player as Judge last year. I'm not afraid to say that. Soto was incredible almost the entire season for the Yankees last year. That home run he hit off Cleveland to win that series, to get to the World Series, basically. I mean, that's one of the best at-bats that you're ever going to see. There's no way around it. You marvel at his talent. He'll eventually be, he'll justify the contract. What is he, 26 years old? But you can't figure baseball. There's no way to predict these things. And I just hope that Judge is able to stay healthy, for the rest of this year. And you want to make another deep playoff run. Now, I would not sign up like right now, get to the World Series and lose. No, not good enough. We're not going to just because the Yankees, the whole thing is, the goal is to win the World Series every year. And even a big season like last year, ultimately George Steinbrenner, the old man, he's gone 15 years now, the former principal owner, Hal's father, he would have judged the year as a failure. Yeah, no pun intended. Even though they almost got to the promised land. They made it to the World Series, and it's the first time they made it to the World Series, I think, since '09, right? I don't think they got to any other World Series. So they got to the big dance. They just didn't win. They had an opportunity to win game one. Losing game one really killed them. It really killed them, because you're going to lose games in a series that you should win. And usually, well, sometimes you bounce back, but in that case, it really crushed them. And they went out in game two, really got beat up. And, it was really losing game three, but that's the thing we saw with the Knicks. The Knicks lost game one. They had a higher win probability in that particular game one than the Yanks against the Dodgers. But when you're 90% to win the first game of the World Series, you got to win it. It's as simple as that. And they didn't. And obviously that set the tone for the series, which they ended up losing in 5 and losing a brutal game 5. It's the kind of game that they lost in game 3 of the Cleveland series, but there they had a 2-0 lead and they were able to regroup and ride it out. But we think of greatness. We think of the legendary names, and we are watching one right now. So rather than do nothing but complain, call into talk radio and all over TikTok and on Instagram, this sucks, that sucks, Hal needs to sell the team, Cashman sucks. I mean, Cashman's been there 27 years. He ain't leaving anytime soon. So I've been telling people this since the mid-2000s. He's not getting fired unless he has some kind of personal scandal. He's not getting fired. You might as well stop saying it. It ain't happening. Boone's not going anywhere either. He's a company guy. He's an organizational guy. He's not going anywhere unless, again, something completely stupid, or if he disobeys direct orders, if they say, we want you to hit Judge fourth, and he goes, fuck you, I'm hitting him now. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So here we are on June 14th, 2025, with Aaron Judge 10 points shy of 400, and he's certainly capable of winning the Triple Crown, although I do think he's going to slump just because he is human. We know this. But let's just enjoy seeing this generational talent, this extraordinary baseball player at his peak for hopefully a couple of more years. And let's win a World Series while we're at it. Let's not make Judge another Don Mattingly. Because Judge right now, obviously he's the best player of his generation. And you could certainly say Shohei Ohtani in the Babe Ruth realm. Well, let's just say he's the best American League player that we've seen in decades. That's how good this guy is. He's better than Mike Trout. And that's not a knock on Trout. They were comparing Trout to Mantle and DiMaggio, which was fair. Judge seems to be operating at another level entirely at this point. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about Judge and the impossible level that he is playing at, and the impossibly high standard that he's setting for himself going forward. My God, if he, let's say, does this and ends up hitting 380 this year with 50 homers and 130 ribs and, wins another MVP, next year he could hit 70 homers, but maybe he'll hit 290. In the immortal words of Marlon Brando, the horror. Maybe so it's better to have this. It's better to have the standards be too high and expectations too high than not high enough. But this guy is extraordinary, and just be grateful, because as a young Yankee fan, when Mattingly was, retired, and when Mattingly wasn't Mattingly anymore for the last 7 years or 6 to 7 years of his career, I didn't think we were going to see anything like him again. Somebody that every year you looked at 30 homers, 110, 25 homers, 120. They don't grow on trees. You don't see players like this very often. And for the Yankees to have developed him from the farm system, we thought Gary Sanchez was actually a bigger prospect. He fizzled out. These things don't always make sense. Sanchez looked like a perennial all-star, had a cannon for an arm. Just didn't happen. And here we are, 8 years after Judge's, big 2017 season. I don't think he was a rookie. But even if he won Rookie of the Year, MVP, he'd had a cup of coffee the previous year. But this is his 9th full season. He's the best there is. And he is in the conversation already. On the field, he is top 5 best players the Yanks have ever had. You wouldn't rank him in the top 5 because no World Series, and that does matter. But there is almost nothing that he can't do and not do spectacularly well. So fingers crossed that Aaron Judge is able to continue doing what he's doing, and the Yanks, get to the postseason in good stead, win the division, and then let's see if you can get a nice run back to the World Series. Aaron Judge, the best player the Yankees have had. Well, best player since Bernie Williams, better than Bernie. I love Bernie. But the best player for sure that they have had since the glory days of Triple Crown winner, 7-time World Series winner, Mickey Mantle. This has been episode 564 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your Saturday early evening with me here in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, go Yankees.